Hello, hello. Coming in. You guys hear me all right? Coming through? Oh, no, Darren. Well, it's the Evan show. What's up, guys? Yeah, I hear you good.
Test, test. Hello, hello. Can people hear me now? Hello? Oh, okay. Okay, Evan, say something again.
Hello, we're good still.
Okay, cool. I think we fixed it. All right.
Nice.
All right, welcome everybody to Can Hammer TV. This is episode 67, and tonight we have, as requested, an interview with Evan Tomchin, who was one of the finalists from LVO, which just happened, I guess, just a few weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago. So welcome, Evan. Thank you for joining us.
Of course, my pleasure. Got third place.
Yes,
So close.
so close.
Oh, honestly, hurts. I'm almost over it.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Some of us, I'm not saying myself, but some of us were secretly in the backs of our minds thinking we can't let Custodes win because they were totally going to get hit by the crazy nerf.
Yeah, I actually intentionally threw the game
Yeah.
per so many Custodes players bribes. So you guys are welcome.
There it is. Yeah. 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 And we can always rely on the Siegs to pull some magic out at the end.
Yeah, fabricator general himself.
Yeah. So, and that was before the Tau book. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So many of you guys wanted to hear from people who were in the final kind of top 8, I guess it was, at LVO. And initially, I thought maybe we wouldn't do that because they were playing kind of old missions, and the mission does affect a lot about what army you play and how you play it and how you make your list and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of value just from hearing about Evan's experience of taking basically like a book like straight off the press to like the biggest tournament and doing really well with it. So we're going to talk about that tonight, and we're not going to talk about all the like individual games in detail, but we're going to talk about that experience, and then we're going to talk about the book. And so it should be an interesting time. So first, Evan, just introduce yourself and tell us how you came into the faction.
Sweet, yeah. So I got into Warhammer itself when I was a kid, probably like middle school. Just awesome models, awesome lore, and definitely was less competitive with it back then. And then kind of waned and waxed my interest with it over the years. But then end of 8th edition, hopped back in. Then COVID hit, kind of screwed up the competitive scene. But also, I found like TTS as a pretty good resource to kind of like get some reps in and meet a lot of like-minded people. And end of 8th, Custodes were pretty good-ish once they got that new book, right? I think it was like just, or I guess it was just when 9th was starting too.
It was like the last book before, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was getting smacked by them, and I was like, all right, I got to see what's going on. They had all these cool strats, and yeah, then they kind of got a little weaker once more of the 9th books came out. I think that first 9th Space Marine book kind of messed them up pretty good. But yeah, they're just super cool models, and yeah, that was my first interest in them, was being like, oh, this army is really good. But then kind of put them on the shelf for a bit after like that Space Marine book came out, to be fair.
Yeah, yep. Did you own a lot of people just ended up playing Forge World Dreadnoughts, like a lot of those? Did you end up do you own a lot of those, or just didn't like that play?
Yeah. They I mean, I think at that time the bike list was cool too. Like a lot, you could go heavy on bikes, and then obviously you gotta have a Telemon, super cool model. I didn't have like the Forge World, the like Achilles or the Galatus yet at that time, so I was kind of just playing like the bike spam. And yeah, I like to dabble around a lot though. But I've always been a collector. Like I was always into the models themselves, so that's kind of like where my collection starts. And then of course once I got into the competitive bandwagon, it's this annoying like trying to keep up with the meta is just a pain in the ass. Like you need 3 of every unit on a Tuesday, and then the next Tuesday you never need that unit ever again.
Yeah. Well, you got to do like me, which is just buy every single model, and then you're good to go.
Exactly. The collection grows.
Okay, so going into LVO then, this book literally came out like 2 or 3 weeks before the event, and they're like, yeah, it's in. And most events wouldn't take a book so soon after release, but this is the marquee event. GW's there. They want everyone to play their new book, so it was allowed. So tell us about your decision about why you decided to take it, and then what you decided to bring.
Yeah, so this is a terrible story. So I was gonna run Grey Knights with all the Grandmasters and a million shots at range, and then I had a bunch of 3D printed Grandmasters that didn't get approved. So I last minute was like, low model count army, easy to transport, hop on a flight from New York to Vegas. This is perfect. I'll bring this new book. The internet thinks it's bad, but like the Art of War guys don't think it's bad. So there's probably some truth in the fact that these guys who more or less full-time job is to play Warhammer, like think it's a good book. So I was like, all right, Custodes it is. I got 3 practice games in with the new book, which were very light practice games, although one mirror match game, which is definitely one of the harder matchups in general. And I snagged Jack Harpster's Goonhammer list that he wrote for some article for them of like just like general good stuff Custodes basically. And then when we were chatting about it at LVO, he's like, yeah, that list was like not optimized. Like I put out this like suboptimal like list, and then I took something that I thought was like even more tweaked for the meta, and then he like and then I like did better than him with this list, and he's just like, what the hell happened? Like this is nonsense. Like he was like, that was a good list, wasn't it? I'm like, yeah, actually, like you might have wanted to stick with it. Those dreadnoughts are just like super great, and obviously the bikes are crazy good.
So just remind us what you ended up bringing to the LVO.
Yeah, so it's 2 3-man bike squads, 2 Achilles, 1 Galatus, and then like troop choices basically, plus wardens and Trajan and a bike captain who puts in work, and a Vexless with the -1 to hit banner. I think there's definitely the flex option of like -1 to hit banner versus +1 to the save banner, but and also it depends on the terrain too, because you do know what the terrain is. At frontline, it was like pretty easy to secure terrain with the -1 to hit. Like dense forests were kind of prevalent, but I still chose it over the +1 cover because I felt the +1 cover was better into Grey Knights, and you already were kind of stomping Grey Knights. And I went Emperor's Chosen, which the 4-up Feel No Pain Against Mortals is like crazy good. And then the extra efficiency on the Melta missiles and dreadnoughts is just like awesome.
Yeah.
And of course, the stratagem to just be anyone you want to be is nuts. Because you just get fallback and charge, which just opens up a ton of plays. You get Shadow Keepers, which just adds one more defensive layer to the army. I don't know if I need to sing the praises of Emperor's Chosen good stuff to you, as if anyone who's checked the competitive innovations Goonhammer articles of late, it's just like EC good stuff, EC good stuff, EC good stuff.
Yeah.
Except for Matt Laura, the guy who ended up in second place and ended up with Shadow Keepers. So props to him for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't end up playing him, right?
No, we kind of skirted around each other and had a good couple chats, since we were both like, we made it with Custodes to like a top 4.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting, because that you could take that list even with the complete change of missions. Like it's still, and I guess that's the power of the book. Really is, it's just strong. You can almost take almost anything right now, and everything has a bit of play. And
yeah, you can definitely stumble into a good list. I think like one of the misses was maybe not bringing Alaris for Rod at the time, because you could have a single man. Yeah, so I didn't have a good third secondary, and I did write an article for Goonhammer recently, which was super cool, being my first time ever doing that, which is awesome because I read Goonhammer all the time. And basically, one of the themes. So if you want to see a detailed breakdown of all the games, go check that out. But one of the themes there was like banners was kind of just this win more secondary, where I'm like, I don't have a good third one. I'm gonna take banners, get like a 5, and then like just table you and be like, cool, I got banner points, but that's because I won already. As opposed to like baking in Rod to the list, which would have added a lot of versatility in like some of the tighter matchups.
Yeah.
Which did come up kind of in all the closer matchups, such as like Thick City, and then such as my final game against Siegler would have been nice to have Rod also.
Yeah.
But they kind of were trading places with either like the Vexilla or the Alara or the Wardens, which like obviously the bodyguard rules in like kind of a broken place at the moment, so having bodyguard is important, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I was initially pretty hard on the Wardens, is more out of tradition than anything else, and then after messing around with the bodyguard rule, then it's like, well, this is kind of like stupid sometimes.
Yeah, I think like the idea is there's some matchups where you just set up a character on an objective, and then especially on the frontline gaming terrain or certain types of terrain, you're just like, cool, I can set it up in a way where he's protected, you can't shoot the bodyguards. And do you want to come get Trajan, because like you need to commit to him in melee, otherwise he's going to heroic into you 6 inches onto that objective. And like I'm sure like in the Tau matchup could be pretty helpful, like having this kind of untargetable character holding an objective.
Yeah.
And also I guess points wise too, they're only like 5 points more or something for like the better stat line, which is just like pretty cool.
Well, yeah, the same cost as the Sword and Board Guardians, at least.
Right.
It's the cheapest way to get an axe, and I mean that's yeah. And you know what's funny is since the new book has come out, people have started rolling 6-ups. Go figure.
Apparently, yeah, right. They're locking them in.
Yeah, it's just a weird thing how that happens. So when you were at LVO, obviously you got this new book and you hadn't had a lot of chance to play a lot of it. So you're kind of like on the fly learning how things work. There's this whole kata system that you got to get used to, that flexibility of Emperor's Chosen can be a bit overwhelming at first, because it's like, well, I need to decide now for the next 2 turns, and you got to kind of read ahead a little bit. How did you find, like, was every game like a learning experience that you just managed to come out ahead, or the book was just super strong?
A little bit of both. I think like having 3 practice games was definitely not enough by any means, obviously. And so like, after day 1, I'm like, cool, I've played as many tournament games with this army as I have played like practice games. So, like, all right, we'll see what day 2 holds, when all the people who are like still 3-0, 4-0 are like, that's when you're going up against real competition. The katas themselves, like in a lot of the practice games, unless you were playing a really tough matchup, you like, and goes to show how broken the book kind of is / was. You could even play without katas. Like unless one particular kata was so helpful, like you need to shut down some pile in consolidate trickery, and you just know that one is the one you're going to queue up. There could have been games where you could have ignored your katas and you'd still be rolling through Death Guard and rolling through whatever.
Yeah.
But definitely by the end of the tournament, I felt like I was getting good value out of them consistently. Starting with either the plus 4-inch range or the movement extra, the advancing one, whether it's advance and shoot or roll 2 dice on the advance. Those were always super helpful. And then, I mean, having the option to do was it the Rendax and the more melee focused ones. Yeah, like having that definitely helped. So Katas were cool, and then the Emperor's Chosen, like you kind of just know that. So like there was a couple of different plays. The fallback and charge is probably the biggest one for sure. You could get one for the you could use the you could get +1 to your charge if you set it up with certain means. But and then I tried to go for a Shadowkeeper's play to like keep some things alive if I thought something was gonna come punch me, which against Siegler's like sent a Ruststalker squad into Trajan, and I'm like did the math before, and I was like, it's like a boatload of attacks. Like if I throw a -1 attack on there, like is he gonna live? He did not live. He died. Like he died terribly. It was like transhuman doesn't help because he's like wounding on 4s already, and he's not re-rolling anything, and you're just like, okay, so I can't turn off the 2 things that might have helped you. Like I'll throw a -1 attack on Trajan and then bodyguard him and make you commit Ruststalkers, which was the plan. So like turn 1, I put Trajan in the center, put wardens protecting him from shooting, and forced Siegler to commit every single turn a squad of Ruststalkers to like something that I would put there. And the issue is that Ruststalkers fucking murder. Like they trade up every single time, which is rough.
Yeah. Yeah. They're very threatening for sure. And Trajan's good.
It's crazy,
but he still dies.
He still dies. I also had Trajan get punked by a Hive Tyrant. Who Trajan charged the Hive Tyrant, was like, oh, I got this, did like no damage, and then just proceeded to get punked in 1 round of melee through transhuman and nonsense. I'm just like, Trajan, come on, guy. You were doing so good for me the rest of the event, and then he just gets punked by a Hive Tyrant, punked by some Ruststalker.
We've all had that experience.
Yeah.
And how do you feel like opponents did against you? Playing against like a brand new book, and maybe they hadn't gotten a lot of games against Custodes yet.
Yeah, definitely. I think people, even the maths behind turning off rerolls and transhuman, people like go from I expect this thing to do this much damage, and then 2-up armor saves and 4-up invulns, and it's all of a sudden like their expected value from 1 activation is completely different from what then happens through 2 stratagems. And then 4-ups, and especially even in the Custodes mirror, it's like, I played 1 Custodes mirror match against the dude who ended up being the number 1 Custodes player in the ITC this year, and which is so rude that I have 3 practice games in, and he's been just crushing it with Custodes, and then he just can't make 4 invulns to save his life, basically, which is just how those games kind of go, right? Like, he shoots 11 missiles at me, and I like transhuman and turn off rerolls, and all of a sudden it's like, like that didn't do nearly as much as it usually does.
Yeah.
And then like I make 2 out of 3 4-ups, and then CP the last one, and also make it, and you're just like, where did this entire turn's worth of damage go? So yeah, I think the expected value, you'll shoot your whole army at Custodes and find that you did way less than you expected you would do, which then kind of means in the following turns you then get to punish them for that mistake pretty frequently.
Yeah. That's certainly one of the places, we'll probably talk about it later, where people feel like they could easily adjust Custodes, just put those 2 key strats back to 2 CP. Because right now it feels like you can just whip it out anytime without even thinking too much about it, and it's okay, and you might get it back on a 5-up, and then you still have CP left at the end of the game, and very different from how it used to feel, where you were spending 2 a time. You run out by like end of 2 sometimes.
Yeah, especially like some opponents. I mean, like the more keen opponents are going to try to bait those out and make sure that you get the minimum value for them, where you're still getting some value. Or maybe we'll split fire and evenly, so that if you transhuman, you're getting like literally half the value that you would, and then their second activation will dump on the squad that you didn't transhuman. But yeah, I think that would be probably a healthy change, as much as I would like to keep spamming those stratagems.
Yeah, I mean, it already incentivized running small units, and if it
Mm-hmm.
goes up, it'll like big units basically dead. Like
Yeah,
you can't spend 3 CP to transhuman like 4 dudes. Like
no, you definitely can't.
yeah,
I'm also like, I know that the numbers don't lie, but I'm all for Custodes being good right now. Like, can we not just
oh,
nerf
me
them?
too.
Like our Drukari like overlords, these Archon overlords, I had everybody's name for 9 months. There was no data slate. I can't live unmolested as Custodes success for like, can I get a couple months?
Yeah.
Is that too
No,
much to ask?
I'm totally in that boat. Like,
Yeah,
we should
like
have our time like every other thing.
because I didn't hop on the Drukari bandwagon, I'm like, this feels okay. Like this just feels okay, and that didn't feel okay. But I'm sure if you're not Drukari or Custodes, you're like, this is all terrible.
Those are also called admech players.
Yeah, which it's like a 40% win rate, and Siegler is like just pulling the entire army's win rate up like single handedly. Madness.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool, and it was really quite amazing to watch it unfold. As these Custodes players kept going higher and higher and higher, and then finally into the top 8. And we're like, yes, we're there. Yeah. And then the final matchup against Seeker is like, dang, you knew it was gonna
I
happen.
know. I mean, that game was insane. Like if I can talk about it for a little bit, if you're
Yeah,
cool
yeah,
with that.
yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, I've like watched the Art of War dudes play on stream so many times. This was like my biggest first showing. And I've won a bunch of RTTs and have done mediocre at GTs basically. And so then to be like 8-0 going into day 3, I'm like, what is going on right now? And I'm like playing Sequel. There's like 50,000 people like views on the stream, and you're on this big stage, all the lights are showing. I'm like, what is going on? Like, how did I get here? The robot is in person in front of me, and then we draw up direct assault mission, and I get to place the first piece of terrain, and I get to go second, and it's just like everything is falling into place for me to win this game. Like, I could not have asked for a better setup. I'm on Stranglehold, I'm on direct assault, and he has to commit one turn earlier, and I'm set up for a turn 5 hold more. Like, the game, and I'm just like, I don't believe it. This is happening. I'm like, the math just shows that I should win this game. And then basically, like, turn 3, he says to me, he's like, there's no way I win this game. Like, you've definitely won. Just look at the math. Like, let's just roll it out. We'll keep playing for the sake of it. And I just go like autopilot, and I just drop the ball completely. And I leave like one unit out in the open, thinking like, I don't really need them. And then he shoots his army at it, and I'm like, I have 2 CP, but I don't even need this unit. I'm not even going to spend either of the stratagems that would make them live longer. And I just am like, okay. And then turn 5 comes, and this play that has been like the play of the entire game of like, I just get this hold more on the final turn and then win. It just evaporates all of a sudden. Like, top of 5, he just makes a play. All of a sudden, the obsec that I needed is just not there, and I'm just like, how did I let this game slip out of my hands?
Well, that's the aforementioned premeditated throwing the game, so that
Exactly. I made so much money,
yeah.
off all the people that bribed me. Totally worth it. No, it was just like, the other thing is, having played an event that is that long, like, so many things had to go right to get me to that position in the first place, that it's extra frustrating. It's like, John Lennon lost his first game. He went 0-1 to start, right? And it's like, he's an amazing player. He gets paired into another great player, and then like maybe dice don't go well for him, and all of a sudden he's 0-1. Chance of him winning the LVO is like 0, and he's just livid. And so, my first game I play against a Death Guard guy who's super nice but plays like less than 6 games a year or whatever, and it's just like, so many of these things had to go well in terms of pairings, in terms of matchups, in terms of like dice rolls over the course of 8 games. I get paired into the number one Custodes player, and then he just bombs 4 Binvolts, and all of a sudden, like, half his army's dead, and I'm like, well, that didn't make sense, but okay, great. And so to get to that, and then to put the first terrain piece, which on frontline game terrain is like huge, because it means that I put a big rune in the middle that like Trajan can just hop in and be protected by like Custodes bodyguards. And then to go second, meaning I have the chance for hold more, stranglehold on the final turn. It's like so many things had to line up that then to drop the ball is just, I'm still not over it. We got a lot of therapy. Igor is causing me a lot of very expensive therapy. But I will say this, I think it's also like, in order to win these kinds of events, you got to be a great player. You also have to play some jank. Like, for the most part, like, people who play jank and aren't that good of players are never going to get that far with this many rounds of event. People who are really good and are playing bad armies are also going to kind of hit a ceiling eventually.
You gotta have both.
And you gotta be like a great player, but also be playing the latest jank, because like somebody else is also playing the jank who's also a great player, and your jank has to out jank their jank, and that's just the only way that like it's going to even itself out. And then there's this other tiny 5 to 10% factor that's just like some amount of luck. And it's not luck in terms of like, did I make a 9-inch charge at a deep strike? It's luck as in like, how did the pairings go over the course of this 8-round event? Like, how many times did I go first? How many times did I go second? And then, how many times over the course of these 8 games did I make 4 Binvolts or something? That the over the course of the game stuff almost matters less than some of this like pairing and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was kind of my biggest lesson. What I learned from 8 rounds of
and you gotta
event.
have the physical and mental stamina. That is a lot of games. That is more games than most people play in months, right? Like, jammed in.
You saw, it's crazy. You saw this data that's like, some people play if you play 1 game a month, then you play 12 games a year or something, and you're playing 9 games in a weekend. It's like, crazy.
Like, at the minimum, like, your feet probably hurt, right?
It's like a lot of coffee.
Yeah,
a lot of coffee.
Water, right? You probably haven't peed in like 6 hours, right? Like,
day 2 is 3 rounds. Then I got put in the shadow round. So then you're playing a 4th game on day 2. So you're playing from 9 a.m. to midnight. It's 12 straight hours, more than that, of just Warhammer. Like, I'm rescheduling a flight for day 3. Like, that's how much confidence I had that I was making it to day 3. By the way.
Well, I mean, the only thing you can say is well done. I mean, it's, as you say, it's not just skill, it's the army, but it's also the endurance and the stamina, and have your wits about you at all times. And it's, sometimes if you make a mistake against probably the best player right now in 40K, then you might lose.
Yeah. If you're going to do it, it's, I wish my mistakes had happened, against my early round 1 Death Guard guy, and not, against the LeBron James of Warhammer at the Super Bowl performance for Warhammer, where he just, of course, he would win the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
He had already won the ITC season at that point. I'm like, dude, just concede. Like, let somebody else have this victory. You've already got the first place for the season. He just had to win the whole thing. In addition to that, and really solidify his hold.
Dominance. All right. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next part of the show here and talk a little bit about the book and how it's doing right now. Obviously, since LVO, the mission's completely changed, and Tau is out now. We had, much to many people's annoyance, a points drop across the board. And we've had the FAQs, which didn't hurt us too badly. And so, the balance update, which didn't touch us. And so we are where we are now. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what are your kind of favorite aspects of the of the book? Like, what do you like most about the new book and playing the new book?
That's a good question. I don't even have a great answer for that. I think, I like Emperor's Chosen a lot right now. The Shield Hosts in general all feel like they're pretty decent. I mean, that Shadow Keepers obviously stand out at the moment. It feels like you always want to play Custodes and feel like they are, as durable as they're supposed to be. And I think like when that first book came out, the like end of eighth, early ninth one, that definitely was like a situation where they felt as durable as they wanted to be, and then all the codexes came out, and then all of a sudden they were not as durable as they were, and so it feels like they've returned to those like levels of dominance where your dreadnoughts are strong, your terminators are strong, and everything is like, even though we don't have the 3 of invuln anymore, they're still like really powerful how they want to play. You have a 3-man army, and that's several hundred points of like someone else's army.
Yeah.
Like I had a turn where it was like, to win this game, can you get hold more, stranglehold, and something else with 3 models? And it's like, yeah, you did, and like that won me a game. 3 single models like held 3 objectives and got it was crazy. So that's kind of like how the Custodes want to play, I feel like.
And actually, to pull the lore card on people, that is supposed to be how they play, right? Like these guys are supposed to be the ultimate gene engineered, like best new humanity can produce, and it feels like that on the tabletop now, which is cool. It's cool. Like, sure, that might not be great for game balance, but like I want my 20 dudes to be the same as your like 200 orcs, right? Like that's
100%.
The whole point of it. Yeah.
Bikes feel fast. Meltas feel strong. Like
Yeah.
The dreadnoughts are monsters.
And that was the problem. So when the faction first came out long time ago, like we were strong. 2-up save back then was 2-up save, right? That was still the bolter generation with AP0. And so 2-up save was 2-up save. And so we were strong. And then the game kind of got a little bit, especially in 9th, out of hand with damage and AP and all this stuff. And then we needed something else because 2-up armor, you weren't getting the value for your 2-up armor anymore, but you're still paying for it. And then now we have a lot of ignore invuln, not a lot, but it's becoming a little bit of a trend, unfortunately. And so now what do? Well, now you have rules that say you can only take certain number of damage per turn. So it's like, it's a never-ending cycle and trying to keep up with it. I'm sure in 5-6 months we're gonna feel like we're not that durable anymore.
Yeah, definitely. It's unfortunate. I mean, like I remember when the Space Marine Codex came out 9th, and it was like all of a sudden I was playing a similar list, and Marines against Custodes, I was getting stomped, and then all of a sudden the new book came out, and it was just like, oh, AP1 everywhere or AP2 everywhere. It's just enough to like make you take enough saves that like things fall apart.
I remember very distinctly a game against White Scars getting hit by bolter barrels in close combat because they don't have a weapon, and they were doing AP with 2 damage. It was like, this dude's fist is doing more damage than my weapon. It's like, it doesn't make sense.
And they always felt like they were, Custodes. It's just such a hard stat line to feel like lore accurate, because you always want to give them an extra attack and an extra, wound and whatever it is.
Yeah. And there's an argument going around right now. I don't know if it's true or accurate or not, but the book was supposed to be released at a different time, last year, maybe like even the summer, who knows, but it didn't. And that's why there was a chapter approved points drop. Not because they obviously there's some shenanigans there in terms of release dates, because it makes no sense that otherwise it would have happened. And so who knows when it was supposed to be released. Same with Tau, right? But it just happened to be released now with what's going on now, and it was not written in that context.
Yeah, it is a weird thing that, navigating the release order is always like a weird issue with this game. But kind of like you were saying, how it leaves Custodes now, I feel like most lists probably got like 100 points extra to like kind of spend on stuff.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I would love to, and we've kind of seen some of these lists doing well already. It's like slotting in a 3rd bike squad, manipulating the dreadnoughts around to maybe have at least 2 to 3 Achilles, or a 3rd, and taking Warrens still, and just kind of running that Emperor's Children good stuff. I think the issue is definitely we lost some secondary play, which is tough. Because the solo Alaris, that's dead. Which was another reason why I didn't even bother bringing it to LVO, not to get like comfortable with this thing that was going to be not happening. And a lot of these new missions have like these actions that you might perform. So there is potentially value in the solo LRs still.
The problem is a lot of those
But I
actions
think,
are like troops or
yeah,
like it disincentivizes the LRs again.
yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, what are you doing? Like scramblers with sisters? Like that feels kind of bad. Um,
Yeah.
it's not ideal. And so it kind of leads me back to the same position that I was in at LVO, where the third secondary is still like banners, and you're going for like a 5, and then I table you, and it becomes a 10, or a 5, and we have a very close game in which the 5 was like unfortunately not as critical as I would have hoped that it would have been.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's your favorite unit? Either just because you like the unit or because it's strong. Like, what's your favorite unit?
I think I gotta say bikes. The bikes are so cool. They've always been so cool. The dreadnoughts have been selling me on it lately. Like this dude has a spear and is like 3 plus D3 damage, is just murdering everything. Like he just seems angry. But the bikes, I mean, come on, I'm flying around like 20 inches and shooting meltas and then murdering the stuff that's what remains. It's like they are probably, I feel like, the unit your opponent is afraid of the most. Especially like I really loved. This was one of the guitar areas that was cool because you're like, I'm either gonna have the advance and shoot, so I'm going 20 and advancing and shooting, or I'm going to have an extra 4 inch range if my opponent's threat range is somehow like affected by me having that extra 4 inches. And so you could set up a play where you have the redeploy, where you're going to redeploy 2 units, and you put the bike somewhere, and you're like, okay, they might be over there, and then wherever they are, ultimately, they're moving 20 inches and then shooting meltas at you, which is just scary to play against. So, like, I had some redeployed bikes against in the shadow round against like Crusher Stampede, where I just put them on the line, started them in the middle, redeployed them to the sides, and was like, cool. Once they jump 20 inches, they actually could shoot your hive guard. And that's really bad for you. Although I did go 6 missile shots, 6 missile hits, 6 missile wounds, and he made all 6 5 bin wounds. So that was kind of whack. And then a hive tyrant ate the entire squad. But it's neither here nor there. Bikes get the pass. What about you? What's your favorite Custodes unit?
I mean, my favorite of all time is got to be the Telemon, just because the model is just amazing, and the Telemon was so good, and then it got triple nerfed for no reason like 2 years ago, and then it went in the garbage for a while, and then we went through this like 2-3 Telemon like in every list kind of deal, and then now again it's still good, but it's not as good as it was. But I think it's the coolest looking dreadnought in the game, so
yeah,
that's why it's kind of cool.
I agree. I would like to see those lists come back. The Telemon got dropped recently, didn't it? A couple points or no?
Went back down to whatever 260 or something, but then you had to pay for the storm. The loss of the Shadowkeeper strat was kind of like,
yeah, definitely big. But, I mean, you could play Shadowkeepers.
You could, but it still doesn't. You still can't use it on Bertha. So,
right.
Yeah, it's no vehicles. They fixed it.
Right.
I feel like that's the Ares and the Orion's fault for that fix.
That was a weird, like, 2-week meta where these planes were flying around and unkillable and just nuking people's armies.
Yeah. But actually, I really like, as well, I just like bikes always, because my first army with Custodes was like 18 bikes back in the bike spam days. But I really like... what's it called? Oh my god, it's just left my brain. Anyway, I like all the models, which is why I have like all of them in multiples, but and haven't really played anything else for the last number of years. So, what's your favorite like game rule? So shield host or kata or like strat? Would you love to just bust out and it just feels so good?
Good question. I think if the kata to kill the pylon consolidates, if it was so critical, then that's like when it is so critical, it's pretty cool to pull that off. Like I had a brick of Terminators that were super slow, and I just like charged the side of them, and they could just never get to me to punch me or to the objectives they wanted to be on. That was cool. But also like, and I mean, this feels kind of lame because you're playing Emperor's Chosen, and then you're excited to be somebody else. So this doesn't feel very like exciting. But fall back and charge all of a sudden, like on the bikes, um, you just you crash on the midfield, and then they leave one or two bikes alive, and all of a sudden those bikes are just in their backfield, and it's
Yeah.
just like major problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's always something we haven't had, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bikes have never been able to advance in charge, and they still can't. And
Still can't.
they used to be able to fall back and shoot hurricane
Mm-hmm.
bolters, arguably, but that used to be good just for mobility. But now being able to just whoop whoop, oh, that's like so good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Because fall back and shoot now, like, is not that exciting.
No, not anymore. Yeah.
You know.
So the my favorite still, and has always been one of my favorite things to bust out since the beginning, is Tanglefoot.
Oh, how can I forget? Yeah,
So good. It's like,
it's just mean.
yeah, and people usually don't, like, they totally forget that that's the thing, and then you bust it out, and it's like, oh, gee, now
Yeah,
my whole
if you are playing some exactly like if you're playing someone who's never played against Custodes, it's like such a feel bad if you don't tell them about it like at least once or twice.
yeah,
You're just like, this is gonna happen when you try to charge me. I definitely tangle footed a grandmaster and then murdered him on the preceding turn, and he was not very happy about
yeah,
that.
yeah, and that's the thing about it is like not only do you get that horrible feeling when you like fail a charge, which sucks, like that's one of the worst feelings in 40k, especially if it's a small one. And then but then you get that unit's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's your turn and then the unit's gone.
I
So
had this. Yeah, there was this turn against the Grey Knights guy. This is in the top 8, the first round, and I was playing terribly. It was like the first game of the day. I set up some awful play where like Trajan got smited to death because I was bodyguarding him, but not thinking well. Because bodyguard obviously doesn't work against smites. And so he kills Trajan, and then he tries to charge with his Grandmaster, and I throw a Tanglefoot, and the Grandmaster is now just like totally stuck out in the open. And then this other unit tries to charge my Dreadnoughts through a forest, and then fails that charge.
yeah,
And all of a sudden, he's just like, ooh, like I was supposed to make 3 charges this turn, and I have 0 now. Or he had 1 more left to make, and he's like, honestly, now I don't want to charge in here because it's not going to do enough. So then all of a sudden, your entire, like, it can throw off the momentum of that turn, and then the one squad that was going to charge, he decided not to charge with, so I heroicked anyway with the Dreadnought. Now the Dreadnought goes in, picks up this whole unit, gets an extra 3 inches of movement, and then moves another 9, and now it's like in your backfield, and it's just like, it was a huge swing, where it's just like, his shooting phase went well, he killed some stuff, Trajan's dying to smites, I'm like, this is not going well, and then all of a sudden you have no charge phase, because of like a well-placed Tanglefoot,
yeah.
and like, you failed to charge through forest. It's like, yeah, that's rough. I remember also when you could Tanglefoot in the movement phase and the charge phase, that was
Yeah.
just dumb.
Well, that wasn't that long ago. It was only like a few weeks ago, but you could still do
Yeah,
that.
true.
Have you yet used that stratagem where you give the guy a name? Like when you kill a guy?
No,
Have you managed to
I want
actually
to
get that
so
off?
badly. No, I want to so badly. I don't know what name he would get and what ability he would pick up, but it will happen in probably a more casual game.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking like the Shadowkeeper's like character killing bike captain might be your best chance of being able to do that. Use that strategy.
Once he does that, like you hope he just goes off the rest of the game, but he probably does nothing after that.
Yeah.
You spend your CP on him, and he's like stuck in a corner somewhere.
Yeah, or he dies.
Yeah, just abruptly to like this invuln ignoring Hive Tyrant that I can't forget about. It just ate Trajan.
Yeah, there's the ignore invuln is pretty nasty. I mean, even Jinx is not as bad as it used to be now.
Yeah,
But man, there's a
ignore and Invulning and AP -4. He's like, you do got to save. I'm like, yeah, I'm Custodes and I'm taking 6-ups out here. Like, this is awful.
well, the ignore invuln always comes with the crazy high AP for whatever reason.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
flat 4. Like, thanks, guy. Terrible.
So in the chat, if any of you guys have used the earning name stratagem, please let us know if you got that off and what you picked and what happened to that character. We would really love to know if anybody's managed to do that
We would.
so far. All right. What's your biggest tip for people either starting the new army, picking up the book because they hear it's strong? Like, what's your biggest tip in terms of winning games?
All right, this is so lame, but you got to roll those 4-ups. Just don't not roll 4-ups. Roll better. No, I
That has
mean, I think
never
that
changed with the army since the beginning.
exactly. Um, and no, I guess like no matter what army you're collecting, it's pick the dudes that you think are cool because the meta's going to fluctuate nonstop in this game, and your local meta results may vary, anyway. So assuming people aren't playing the most competitive lists, which, like we were just saying, most people aren't even playing 12 games a year, which is one game a month or so. So pick the dudes you think are cool. And Custodes, like we were saying, you can also you can't really go wrong. You can kind of stumble into a good army at the moment. Everything's strong. But trade is cool. Get a cool bike captain. Honestly, at the army where it is right now, pick the guys that you think look cool because you literally once you fill out a battalion with shield with guard, whatever's left is going to be putting in work. Although I'm sad about the what are they called? Not the Virtus Praetors, the shooty guys with jump backs.
Oh, the Venatari?
Yeah, the Minotari. They're just sitting on my shelf right now. They're just like waiting for some sort of love that they probably won't get now.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, I grudgingly accept the amount of Forgeville input we got, but seems like there was a few things that were left out, like bikers and the Agamemnon guys not getting. Like, there's just seems like it was a half-assed effort, unfortunately. Part of us,
Yeah, it always
that,
takes it takes forever for them to get like all of their kind of eggs in the same basket. I feel
which
like.
is annoying because they already had like an extra, who knows, 6 months or whatever from when this was supposed to come out.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Scott Adams says that at LVO he got his shield captain the fallback in charge trait from earning a name, which would
That's
be
cool.
pretty sweet on a bike cap for sure.
Yeah, that's not bad.
That must be doing.
You have to come up with a name.
Oh yeah.
Is it you?
Name too.
I honestly, is it? Did they pick up the shield host or they pick up the warlord trait of the shield host?
No, they don't get a warlord trait. They get one of the traits.
Okay. Yeah. Fallback in charge definitely would be spicy.
Yeah.
Or permanent shadow keepers or something.
Yeah, I guess you have to decide what you want the person to do on the next few turns. But yeah.
Moral story is your one character with shadow keepers is not going to survive some rust stalkers. Let me tell you that. That is. Jack Harpster was like, we were doing the math before. He's like, just put Trajan out there, give him -1 strength, throw all the buffs on him, see what happens. And we just like did not calculate it that properly, and Trajan just ate it like really badly.
Well, Jack, if I remember correctly, was also the person whose Trajan got picked up turn 1 by 10 Gene Stealers in his first game of their stream.
Jack also wrote the list, so as much as you let me down, Jack, you also brought me here. So thank you, Jack. Appreciated.
All right. So there's some chat about other shield hosts. Obviously, I think it's hard to argue that Emperor's Chosen is probably inches ahead of Shadow Keepers. Maybe Shadow Keepers also very strong. Maybe in the mirror, it's also pretty strong. Assuming people are going to come and fight you. But people have had a lot of success with the other. I think Aquilin Shield is probably the one with the least I've heard of success. But Solar Watch, Emissaries, people are having success with all of those things. It just shows that everything is pretty strong.
Mm-hmm.
Just people tend to use the strongest one, if they're going to pick one.
Yeah. I think Mortal Wounds was always like a big issue for Custodes. So just having a 4-up kind of dissuades the Mortal Wounds approach to murdering you. And then obviously the flexibility of fallback and charge is probably the singularly most used Emperor's Chosen swap too.
Yeah, I wonder what people would think of Emperor's Chosen if we didn't have that strat.
Yeah, or if it was more like 2 CP or something.
Yeah,
I know that these are kind of some of the discussions that people are having around like how to balance it. Like, okay, we're bumping the CP cost of these 1 CP strats, then maybe we just destroy the Emperor's Chosen strat entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah. 4 more against Mortals is still spicy. 4 up against Mortals and the rerolls the mastercrafted rerolls, that probably is still enough even without the strat, honestly.
Yep. No, I agree. The final question before we go to the question channel is, what do you think we should be the most scared of right now? Do you think we should be scared of Eldar? Traditionally, we are.
I think we're the most scared of Tau right now. From what I've read about people's thoughts of the Eldar book, it's not crazy overpowered. And I mean, they also did say that about the Custodes book, and then we came out and smashing. So I'm tempered expectations on Eldar. I don't think they're going to break it. I could eat those words. I think the Tau book is definitely really good against us. Like, I thought in the beginning that maybe we had some play with the bodyguard rule just being kind of janky. But watching, I think you take a third bike squad for Hurricane Bolters so you can like kill some drones before you then try to shoot the battlesuits with your missiles, and I don't know. It sounds great.
That we've always had
Yeah.
to do against Tau. Hurricane Bolters
Yeah.
to kill drones. Oh man, it's so annoying.
It sounds good in theory, and then you're like put it on the table, and like you maybe kill a crisis squad, but you also don't see a crisis squad because they're like fire and fading every turn and like air bursting you slowly, and they have more garbage to throw out on the middle objectives because they're just throwing like Kroot hounds out, and you're like running out of things to throw on objectives. So I'm optimistic, but and they also have a better secondaries plan because they're baking in Nachman data into their army, and you're like kind of struggling to do that unless you commit a lot of points to it. So yeah, Tau scary.
Yeah. I personally think Eldar is going to be strong, and I think that's based purely on the observation that it is such a huge book that there's going to be strong stuff in there. It's just going to take people a while to find it.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be strong. They have so many rules that there's going to be jank in there for sure.
But also just it's a playable army. Like it's has a bunch of tools that you can always use. It's not like maybe it doesn't data sheet math hammer you to death, but it like in the hands of a good player can definitely give you problems.
Yeah. I'm always scared of Eldar. They have so many things that they just have because they're Eldar. Like, yeah. Like, even those stupid gate things. Like, even though...
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that.
Like, what the... Like, oh, man. Like, why GW do stuff like that? Like,
gotta sell his fortifications.
Oh, man. Fortifications. All right. We're going to go to the question channel now. Have a few questions on here. Okay. Okay, so this was something we talked about kind of already, our win rates, and I hate using win rate as a stat in general, but anyway, it seems to be what people like to use. Super high, and so where do you think, like, you think we're probably going to get adjusted? I think it's almost inevitable. Where do you think it's going to hit us? Points, CP?
How bad? Yeah. I mean, the CP on the 1 CP to 2 CP strats could make sense. It could make sense. It could also be just points come easier. Like, points is just easier for them to adjust.
They could just reverse the chapter-proof points drops. That's not
they would go even further. They probably, like, I think it seems to me like what, they're more against, as they're less for rewriting rules and more for balancing on points costs alone, and they make things that aren't good and things that are too good not as good. The idea. So like maybe that means we get points reductions on things that aren't seeing play, and then every single thing that's in like Emperor shows and good stuff right now just goes up 5 to 10 points. Like bikes go up, dreadnoughts go up, wardens go up. Yeah. Trajan goes up. That's probably
Trajan's gonna go up probably, which is a shame.
Yeah,
he's loving his newfound low point level.
He's so much better for less points. It's crazy.
People forget that he used to be like 250 points.
Yeah, he also was like D3 damage, wasn't he, or something?
Well, her whole army was D3 damage.
Yeah, but him too. Like, he should have had a flat 3 forever.
Yeah, and then that relic axe came out, which was flat 3, and it was like, yo, dude, you took the wrong axe.
Yeah, like, whose axe do you have?
All right, next question. Do our old best units have any place in the new meta, Venatari and Telemon? So we kind of talked about that a little bit. The Telemon is
Yeah.
still okay, but I think you would almost want to take 1.5 of the other Dreadnoughts instead of a single Telemon.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
I've been
Um,
toying with single Venatari units, whatever loadout you want, just as because at the end of the day, they're still flying 12-inch moving OBSEC infantry that is relatively hard to kill and you can hide them, although the wings are slightly annoying. So I think they still have some play, objective play, and kind of mission play, although I don't think you can treat them as a hammer unit or anything like that.
yeah, I like the first practice game I played was before I'd read the codex, but I just wrote up a list anyway and then put them on the table. And I was like, "Where is the double fire strat? It's just not there anymore." Like they used to murder things, and then they just don't. I brought a 5-man unit, didn't read the codex, put them on the table, tried to double shoot them, couldn't find the stratagem. It didn't exist, and was sad, and never played them again. So yes, maybe they have some objective play. It's just hard to commit. Every single Custodes unit is so expensive that like they all like every 3-man unit needs like a role, and you defined what that role is, so it definitely does exist, but like yeah, dicey.
Yeah, and I think the biggest problem for them may be that they're fast attack where bikes are.
Yeah, yeah, and they're still not cheap.
Yeah, and they're more expensive than guard unit, and so yeah, I don't know. They're not cutting it right now, despite their speed.
Mm-hmm.
All right. In regards to warlord traits and relics for the bike captain, which are your
Oh, just real
favorites?
quick, if you could get them to count as the 2 models thing, and then they would count as a 6-man unit, and then you could like retrieve data with them, then that'd be cool.
Yeah, like if you could for
But,
like those kind of things.
yeah, like if the secondary missions that required like counting as, or like if you could still count as 2 dudes per 1 dude, then you could actually like retrieve data and blah blah blah. That'd
Yeah,
be cool.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying about the warlord traits relics?
Favorite warlord trait and relics, kind of loadout for your bike captain.
I got the redeploy. I got the extra attacks after I murder people, and I got uh,
Do you go 5 up feel no pain,
five Feel No
minus
Pain.
one to hit? Which one do you prefer?
5 Feel No Pain is what I had. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's killing it. That guy is good.
fairly standard.
He could,
The standard.
yeah, he couldn't kill like Skatari through a 5 pinball. No, that was just sad. I'm expecting him to pick up like 10, and he picks up like 4 or 5. And he also can't kill Rax, which is like also annoying through a 5 pinball. And you're just like, you had one job, guy. Like, you had one job. Like,
So, are you a tip of the spear guy, or are you the fallback?
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I grabbed tip of the spear too.
Yeah, yeah. All right, fairly standard stuff.
It was standard, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some people run the radiant mantle for minus one to hit instead of the 5 up feel no pain, but I don't know. I gotta. There's plenty of kind of minus other ways to get minus one to hit, and that feel no pain is just makes them so tough.
Yeah. Also, I didn't bring like a foot commander or anything. Like I just brought the Trajan and the bike captain. And I know if you're taking the guy on foot, then you take like Praetorian's plate, which definitely has some play too.
Yeah, yeah. Thoughts on the Vexilla? What do you think of the Vexilla these days? Take one, don't take one.
So I brought him. I brought the minus one to hit. I did enjoy it. Like I think if you're gonna hop in a forest with bikes, okay, yeah, that makes sense. You're not losing any movement. I don't really want the dreadnoughts moving 7. I don't want the foot guard moving slower. So I did like having it. But I also could see push comes to shove, you find that 100 points kind of helpful to put into other things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you really need to fill out another unit, like then I could see that being the next thing to go.
Do you think it's vital against Tau? I mean, it used to be super vital. Like they basically couldn't hit you without marker lights if you had that banner around.
Yeah, definitely still big. I mean, I'm not cutting him yet for sure. But I think also like you should just know what your terrain setup is. Like your RTT terrain is going to be so much different than FLG terrain versus GW terrain. FLG, like there is a decent odds that you have a forest on the table. I think it was something like 75% plus odds that you had a forest that you could place on your side. So in those kind of situations, maybe you could bring that list to FOG without the -1 to hit guy. But if you're at your local RTT, that could be huge, maybe,
Yeah.
especially in the Tau. They got so many rerolls, but then if you're at -1 and you're turning off reroll, then you're like, yeah, maybe you're in a good spot.
Yeah. Okay. And last question. Man, I saved this for last because it's hilarious. I love questions about who I like to call Christopher Walken, or AKA Valerian.
Mm.
So people are like, "Ooh, look, these people that like Gaz and the stupid flying Necron thing, and now I think the Phoenix Lords are
The stupid flying Necron thing.
yeah, max
The
3 damage."
Satan would like to have a word with you.
That's it. Yeah.
Come on, Darren.
And now I think Phoenix Lords have the kind of max 3 whatever rule. So do you think Christopher Walken should get some play?
Um, First of all, I will say every single time the Satan hops on the board, you're just like, how does this work, and why is this a thing that I'm now thinking about? You start racking your brain for like, all right, what other phases can I do damage to this thing? Like, so dumb. But long answer is, or short or long answer is just no. Although I will say, despite having played such a minimal amount of games with this book, I have actually read that book. So props to him. He's a gangster, but don't put him on your table unless you think he's cool.
Yeah, like I begrudgingly had to give him a sideways thumbs up because he is better than he used to be, but it just like the fact that you can't give him anything is it unfortunately just kind of sinks it for him. Yeah. And then who actually has the dagger, him or the girlfriend? Because they both have daggers on the data sheet. So like, what happened there? I don't really understand.
Yeah,
I know what happened.
I know he did so much like cool stuff, and then his sword was like broken, right? I think. Did you read the book? I read the first book. I didn't read the second one. I don't know. We'll stay tuned. I'll get back to you about that. We'll figure out where the dagger is.
All right, cool. Well, thanks very much, Evan, for joining me tonight and chatting with us about your experience at LVO and about your thoughts on the book. Very much appreciated for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Hope to see you guys soon. Give a quick shout to if you're ever in New York City, come play Warhammer. We got like a Warhammer Discord called basically called Competitive Warhammer in New York City. Just Google it. And also shout out to Carcosa Club in Brooklyn, another Warhammer club. And check out the YouTube channel. We got the competitive standard 40K is where we play a bunch of battle reports. We've been not playing that many lately, but it's also run by my buddy Nick, who has won GTs and did super well at LVO too. So it's always good level play, and we will definitely get some Custodes on Tau violence soon. So go check it out.
It's the best kind of violence, fish people violence.
We'll see how it goes.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for following, subscribing, liking, being patrons, all the usual things. Join the Discord, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night. We got podcast is back with Steve Joel, and so we'll be having a good chat with Steve tomorrow night. All right. And thank you very much, Evan, again, and good night.